The Ever Romantasy Challenge is a challenge created by Cassidy from Covers with Cassidy that involves a bunch of romantasy tropes and micro tropes where you have to read different books to fulfill different challenges. When she told me about this, I thought that it was going to be such a fun idea. There have been people creating TBRs and sharing them, and I got FOMO and decided that I wanted to do it myself. I will link Cassidy's video down in the description box where you guys can check out the original challenge as well as her TBR, and she explains it significantly better than I do, but I wanted to go through the books that I was hoping to read for this. So here's the board that she created. You have 3 challenge goals. This looks like so much fun, and I had a blast filling in my TBR. It actually led me to some books that maybe I had not really thought about reading or wasn't sure that I was going to pick up anytime soon, so I'm very excited to be getting to these sooner rather than later. So I'm going to kind of go through these and match up what book my first trope is and then follow along with the prompt that it fits for the second challenge. So the first challenge is Reluctant Allies. This is basically enemies to lovers, but not quite enemies. They just really need to do something together and they really don't want to. It's one of my favorite tropes in fantasy romance. It's one of my favorite things to read about. For this one, I'm going to be going with Reign of Shadow and Endings by Melissa K. Rourke. I did confirm that this one would work with Claire because sometimes tropes are a little bit hard to figure out in synopses, but she said that she thought that this one would work. I have read the Lady of Darkness series by this author and really enjoyed it, so I'm excited to move on to the other series. This one I think I'm going to be using for my audiobook for the second challenge. It is on Everand, and I really like the Lady of Darkness audiobooks, so I'm hoping that I will enjoy the audiobook for this one as well. Then we have Fated Mates. This one brought up a book that I had never really heard of before. Fated Mates for me was a little bit more challenging just because it's not a trope that I tend to gravitate toward, but when done well, I do find that I can like it, but typically speaking, I find it to be one of my lesser favorite tropes, so it's not books that I typically seek out, so I had to go seek some out. For this one, I went with Of Mischief and Mages by L.J. Andrews. This one is actually part of the Forgotten Kingdom series, which I think is very similar to the Mortal Enemies to Monster Lovers series, which has Carissa Broadbent and Claire Sager, Helen Scher, a couple of different authors that I've really enjoyed. Basically, they all wrote a book that kind of fell into a similar trope, but it was set within their own world and set within kind of their own thing. So it didn't necessarily follow part of a series connected, but it followed a similar trope and was set up as part of its own series. I don't know if that makes any sense, but this series, The Forgotten Kingdoms, seems to do a very similar thing, and so I'm excited to read this one from L.J. Andrews and then maybe find others in this series that I will be interested in as well. And for our second challenge, it's going to cover the Kindle Unlimited prompt. That one was super easy to cover, so for now we're going to slide it in there, but we could end up switching that out at some point in the future. Next up, we have 2+ Love Interest, which was one of the ones I looked at and went, Cassidy, why would you do that? Because in my head, I was thinking like reverse harem or throuple or something like that. She did say like love triangle could absolutely count as well. Spark of the Everflame has something that I think you could count as 2+ love interest, even though it's not really a love triangle. So they are out there if you're not interested in like reverse harem or why choose. I do think I am going to go with a why choose. I have yet to find one that I really liked, but I don't necessarily think it's something I dislike. It's just not something that I found that I liked yet. And I'm going to be going with one that I actually have pre-ordered the Apolycon edition because she sold out before I could manage to get my hands on it, but I pre-ordered it while I was there, so it's on its way to me. And that is The Castle of Nevers and Nightmares by Lana Pekekrik. It has trials, which is something that I usually enjoy, and we're going to see how that goes. I could end up switching that back out and trying Broken Bonds again because I feel like I did not give that one a fair chance and I kind of want to try it again, so we could end up switching that one out. We'll see. I also was tempted to switch it out for Hemlock Queen, which is the sequel to The Foxglove King, which has a love triangle, so there are actually more options for this one than I thought I was going to have. But for this one, we are actually going to be using it for a book that I already own. Again, a little slight teeny tiny cheat because I have it pre-ordered, so it's not physically in my possession, but it's on its way to me. I had already ordered it before putting it in this slot. The money is from my wallet, so I'm considering it as a book that I already own. Next up, we have Arranged Marriage. Again, not a trope that I tend to gravitate toward, so thank you, Cassidy, for making me step out of my comfort zone and read things that I would not normally gravitate toward. For this one, I'm going to be going with House of Bane and Blood. This one is kind of like fantasy romance, but make it mobster. and I've been really interested in this. It's getting a lot of buzz right now. I'm seeing so many people talking about it on Instagram, and there are 2 or 3 different sub boxes, I think Bookish Box and Fabled, I know of for sure, that are doing this book coming up. So it's just getting a lot of hype, and I'm so excited to give it a try. The second book did recently come out as well, so if I enjoy it, I can just kind of fly through it. For one of the second challenges, we do have use a spinner wheel. So I did put a lot of different books on this spinner wheel, spun it, and got House of Bane and Blood. So this one will be going into the spinner wheel prompt for the second challenge. Next up, we have Bodyguard trope, which is one that I really want to read more of, but just have a hard time finding. And I don't know why that is, because when I started looking, I found a lot. It just took me a little while to figure it out. I actually have 2 books that I could put in for this one. One is The Claw and the Crown by Sarah M. Craddock. I thought I was going to have already read this one when I was kind of making my TBR, but I actually have not read it yet, so I could end up using that one. But the one that I currently have slid in is A Crown of Ash and Silver by B.C. Fajon, I think is how you say their last name. This one is one that I just kind of saw on Instagram one day. It was recommended on one of, I think it was Sav's Books Instagram Reels. So I think that it's high time that I pick it up. It is a bodyguard romance. That's really all that I know about it, but it sounds really interesting. I love the cover. For this one, it's going to be slotted into the new author on my second challenge. Next up, we have Enemies to Lovers. I don't know why this was so hard for me to figure out. I went through so many different books and I was like, I don't know what to choose for this. I don't know if it was too many options or that every option that I could think of was a sequel. And while I needed a sequel for one of the prompts on this, I also was not sure that sequels really fell into Enemies to Lovers, because I find that most of the time, by the time we get to sequels, they aren't really enemies anymore. They are either reluctant allies or they are a little more on the lover side of things. They're not true enemies. So sequels just didn't really feel like they were going to fit, but that was all I could think of was sequels. So for this one, I did end up going with A Kingdom of Stars and Shadows. I think I could still probably use the sequel to A Veiled Kingdom, which is the same author, Holly Renee, but we'll see which one I end up slotting into that. I do want to try her other series because I have heard that it is still a lot of fun. I think it is significantly more smutty than A Veiled Kingdom, but either way, I really want to read more from this author, so I think that both of those will be good choices for me. And we're going to be sliding that one into A Friend Recommends. Claire has really enjoyed it. Cassidy has recently read it and said that it was just a really fun time and she enjoyed it as well. Both of them told me that I should give it a try, so I think that it would easily slide into that spot. Then we have Forbidden Love, and Forbidden Love I feel like is one that I enjoy but can be harder to find on just like the synopsis of a book because it typically is overshadowed by some of the other prompts. I did end up finding that I think To Bleed a Crystal Bloom by Sarah A. Parker ends up fitting this prompt. I don't remember where I saw that. I think I asked somebody and they said it would fit into Forbidden Love, or maybe I found it on a list somewhere. I should probably verify that. But I do distinctly remember seeing that on a list somewhere. I read When the Moon Hatched and really enjoyed it, so I've been wanting to try the author's other series. When she sent out the trope card at ApollyCon, the tropes on To Bleed a Crystal Bloom were definitely more my speed than even When the Moon Hatched, and I enjoyed When the Moon Hatched a lot. I gave it a 4-star. So I'm like, okay, if the tropes for the other series are much more my alley, then maybe I will enjoy it even more. So I definitely want to pick it up and give it a try. And for this one, I've seen it on social media everywhere, so I'm going to be slotting it into my social media rec. And last but not least, the one that was the hardest, I think, for me to figure out was Friends to Lovers. Friends to Lovers is just not a trope I gravitate toward. It wasn't a trope I gravitated toward when I was reading contemporary romance. It's not a trope I gravitate toward now that I read more primarily fantasy romance. I don't know why that is. I think sweet, kicking my feet kind of romance is just not really my thing. I like knives. I like knife to the throat. I like stabby. I like yelling at each other. It's just my thing. What that says about me, I don't know, but it's what I tend to gravitate toward in romance. So this one was a little harder for me. I sought out Maria and she gave me a couple of different recommendations. I think what I'm going to end up doing is going with Blood Sanctuary by Bella Roth because they clearly are friends to lovers, and even though this is a sequel, I still feel like it fits that trope. If for some reason I end up deciding not to go with that one, I have been told that I could potentially go with Daughter of No Worlds, or at least the sequel to Daughter of No Worlds, and you're going to see where sequel is playing out pretty strongly here in just a second. Or I think there was a Sarah M. Craddock that they said that I could potentially do. Anyway, I was having a hard time finding a Friends to Lovers that people thought that I would actually like, and I know that I love Cassia and Leo. Their relationship is one of those that is really sweet, but there is enough to it. There's enough depth to the story and the world and their relationship that it's not just gaggingly sweet. It's still got things that I really, really enjoy about it. So I think I'm gonna slide that one into Friends to Lovers. And this is where the sequel comes in, because the second challenge, there is a sequel on there. This is the only sequel on my top 10 on the first challenge, so I absolutely needed to get a sequel in there somewhere. And then for the micro tropes, honestly, I have not really looked into a lot of depth to see which ones I think am going to fit where. I want to kind of read and see what fits as I go. I think it's going to be a lot of fun to just kind of play scavenger hunt as I'm reading the books to see what comes up. And as far as the bonus challenges, I think, again, I'm just going to kind of see where those pop up and see if I end up having to read additional books to fill those, although I'm going to try very hard not to. So I will leave Cassidy's video up here for you guys to check out. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me. Leave me a heart emoji down in the comments below if you just want to let me know that you were here and hanging out. As always, links to my Patreon, Instagram, Twitter, and Goodreads are down in the description box below. Please give this video a big thumbs up if you liked it and subscribe if you want to, and I will see you guys next time. Bye!